Hey Queen, so before we get into this video, again, remember I got Miss Robot Season 1 on DVD at Target. It was on sale for $19.99. I don't know if it still is, unfortunately. I know I got mine for around like $35, $40. I really don't remember, but I know it's kind of pricey, but I remember it was on sale for $19.99. I saw it at one Walmart. I don't know if it's only select Walmarts that'll carry it, or if all Walmarts will eventually have it and stuff, but of course if you can't get it on DVD or Blu-ray, or iTunes or anything like that, you can buy the season on Amazon Prime, or if you do have Amazon Prime, you can stream it. I don't know if that'll ever be on Netflix or any other thing like that, but also, I mean, you can catch up on whoismrrobot.com. There is an after show going on the website whoismrrobot.com. I believe The Verge is running it and stuff like that. I don't know, I didn't really feel like watching it. I was like, whatever. But yeah, I remember I got season 1 on DVD, so I just thought I'd share that again. And also, I don't know if it's still on stands, because I don't know if this is like a regular issue, this is a month-long issue or something, because it just says their 10th annual issue, but the issue with Kim Kardashian on it is the one that does have Rami Malek in it. I did mention those two things in the last video and stuff, and I am wearing one of the shirts that Mr. Robot sent me. I do have this same print from South by Southwest. If you watch my Mr. Robot South by Southwest vlog, I think it's red on black and stuff like that. So this is a white on black. I like it and stuff. I think I'm like, you can see my nipples. I like Rami Malek. But yeah, so those two things I just want to get out there. And also, if you do remember when I did the first episode recap, I did talk about American Horror Story. And I got this in the mail today. It is from those Funko Pop things. I've only collected the Disney ones. I was kind of thinking of making a video because those ones look popular, and I was like, well, I guess I'll just share my own like little Disney thing. But as you can see, it is the Countess and stuff. I took her out of the box so I can like display her, but it's basically Lady Gaga's character in American Horror Story Hotel. So here she is, and I wanted your guys' opinion. Since Mr. Robot follows me and they send me stuff, and since I went to South by Southwest and everything like that, I thought if you guys wanted me, like, if you guys can share this video, comment on it, and I can direct message Mr. Robot, or like I can try, you know, tweeting with Stephanie Corneliuson, who plays Joanna, or maybe Carly Chaikin, Darlene, Portia, who plays Angela, even Rami or Christian Slater. I can like tweet at them, I can direct message Mr. Robot and stuff like that, and be like, hey, like I feel like we should have like a little Mr. Robot Funko Pop thing, you know, wouldn't that be cool to have like one of Mr. Robot, one of Elliot, obviously, in like the iconic looks of the black hoodie. And I don't know who the other two would be. I know those two would be really cool if we could have those like as characters, and maybe possibly someone in an fsociety mask and one of those like doll things. But you know, like if you guys kind of want me to like message them or something, please like the video or comment down below. But I just had that idea in my head. So again, this is the review on episode 2.1, Colonel Panic. And again, I always write these in my Taylor Swift journal. If you haven't watched me for a while, you haven't subscribed, please do. I did the whole first season and stuff. I believe I have a playlist. I also try to like link the videos in a card. I know I always say I'll link them in the description, but I usually just do like a card thing. Eventually I'll like go back in and edit these things, because I stay up like a long time. Like right after I film this, I edit it, and then I have to like export it and then upload it and blah blah blah. I'm doing like this and that, you know, trying to make little details. But anyways, again, episode 2.1, Colonel Panic. Now, the first episode was 2 parts. If you didn't watch that one, well, you know, you kind of like, I guess, missed out, so to speak, but not really. So the first one was 2 parts, and that was kind of like an introduction, really, of who our characters are, blah blah blah. And then we saw the first episode of Hacking Robot with Andy Greenwald. Now, with Colonel Panic, it recapped the last episode, you know, as in the beginning of every episode. It's kind of like previously on, blah blah blah. And it kind of just shows you the most important parts, I guess, that are going to be referenced to this episode, etc., etc. So, this is interesting, because we see the Jack Black guy. He comes back, and he's talking to the Bill Cosby guy. I believe his name is Jerome. Sometimes I don't remember their names, so don't, like, throw sticks and stones at me or whatever. And they're going to the fsociety arcade. So, obviously, they were here when they did the hack. They were there for everything. That was basically all of season 1's, I guess, set, so to speak. And there is like a mall Santa kind of a person there, like taking donations, a little red bucket, like Salvation Army, I think is the organization or whatever. And this is kind of touched upon at the end of the episode with another person in a totally different setting, and kind of, I guess, in a way, as Mr. Robot does, like exposing the evil behind things, etc., etc. And then he's talking about some husband guy that like killed his wife and the family, and then himself, and they didn't know there was any motive, and then that kind of in a way became part of the arcade's history and such. And then some lady was drunk and she died when she fell off like a stool and something went right through her neck. And then the place Fun Society was bought in, I think, 2002, he said. And it was bought by a dad who had twin sons, and the son wanted to sell. The dad was like, no, whatever. Because the son wanted money for whatever reason, or whatever, like maybe he was on drugs, who knows. Like, it just says that, like, he wanted, like, basic money for, like, basic things and such. And then he says, like, how he killed his dad with his twin brother's rifle. So, since they are twins, I guess he can get away with it in the sense of, like, they're twins. In a way, they look the same. I know twins don't have the same fingerprints. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'm not sure. And he fell out a window, which kind of took me back to when Mr. Robot threw Elliot out the window in part 2 of the premiere. And I was just thinking, like, oh my god, everyone's falling out of windows now. And then the brother got arrested and stuff. And then he's like, oh, well, how'd you know that? And then the Cosby guy was like, well, he was my cellmate. And that reminded me of American Horror Story. I guess coincidentally, ironically, whatever you want to say, of American Horror Story Hotel episode where hypodermic Sally is pushed out of the window by the mom of... I always forget the actors' names. I want to say it was Donovan. The guy who played Donovan, Kathy Bates' character, she's the one who pushes the hypodermic Sally out the window of the Hotel Cortez, and I don't know, just that part where the twin brother killed the dad with the other brother's gun and stuff like that, and how he fell out the window because of the kickback. That just took me to that, and kind of like how the hotel makes you do evil things, it seems, as F-Society made you do evil things. And that is what he touched upon. He's like, oh, he's like, promised me, like, when you got the keys and stuff, like, you would burn this place down and stuff, because he's like, F-Society makes you crazy. And then I wrote down, I was like, haunted. And then I kind of laughed to myself, because when we had the premiere on Facebook, I was like, does, like, Elliot, like, contact Mr. Robot through, like, an electronic Ouija board of sorts and stuff? And then, like, that pops up, like, they're actually talking about ghosts and stuff. So it's like, oh, this is gonna be, like, an American Horror Story, Mr. Robot kind of a thing. So I was like, okay. And then he wants to sell it to, like, the Jack Black guy and stuff. And to me, I felt like this was, I don't know, like, the origins of F-Society, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is afterwards, because, like, oh, he gave me the key. And at first I was like, okay, then this is, like, I guess how F-Society came to be and stuff. And then he's like, oh, no, we want you to work with us, Jack Black tells Bill Cosby. And then he was like, oh, like, why? Like, I was in jail, and everything like that and everything. And then he's like, well, you can rent it, or someone else will, like, buy it. And then he tells them, well, don't you want to get back at the system? Like, what we do is going to pay off everything. Because he's like, oh, I need money. That's why he's, like, trying to rent it out or, like, sell the place and whatever and stuff. Since he got the key. And then Jack Black tells him, like, oh, well, like, this person wants it or whatever. And then he's like, who? And that's where I thought it was, like, the origins of F-Society. Like, I thought those two were somehow, like, talking, previously. And then, like, somehow either Mr. Robot or Elliot, as they say, since they're, like, the same person at that time, either talk to him, maybe the Dark Army, maybe Darlene, or, someone that knows them, and that's how they got into F-Society. Because remember, it's kind of as if, I guess, how Elliot doesn't know anything, and he does stuff. I felt like maybe that could have been how F-Society was created. Like, he was having that trip before the morphine and everything, and he somehow bought the F-Society arcade, and he's doing this, and he's doing that, but, of course, we won't know unless Sam Esmail does something. And then we go into, like, some aerial shots and stuff, and then Elliot is just talking about how there's, like, a fear, like, nesting inside of him, and it's burrowing in him and stuff like that. And he doesn't really know, and it's just, like, narrative. And then he's on the phone with Tyrell still, and then he's like, because I'm thinking, again, is this really Tyrell? Is this his mind kind of playing a game on him? Is Tyrell still alive? Is Tyrell dead? Like, who knows? Is it a recording that's on the phone with Elliot? With, like, automated answers? I don't know. Like, maybe they're that smart. And then Tyrell tells him that he's not where he's supposed to be yet and stuff. And then Elliot's like, well, where is that? Like, what do you mean by that and stuff? And then Tyrell's like, well, that's not a good idea to say over the phone because, like, their phones could be tapped and stuff. Like, And they made that commitment of society, like they only meet in person, like they wouldn't do a lot of electronic things because it can be traced back and stuff like that. And then he also tells them like someone could be listening, and then he's like, not safe, I wish it was. And then he says, okay, like let's just think about that night where we became gods. And gods are referenced again at the end of this episode. I want to say this was referenced somewhere around the finale of the first season. Mr. Robot does like his little kingdom of bullshit kind of a thing. And then he says like, tell me and stuff. And then Mr. Robot comes and hangs up. And then he's like, basically he's like, I'm here to save you and stuff like that. And then he's like, we're here to basically make the panic stop. And I guess by saying like, we're here, in a way communicating that is basically saying like, I'm here, you're here, there's two of us, like you need me as much as I need you. So Elliot needs Mr. Robot as like two heads are better than one kind of a situation. Mr. Robot just needs Elliot in order to be present, to be alive. Like it's his alter ego, so to speak, like a Dr. Jekyll and Hyde kind of a thing, I suppose. And then we go to Gideon dead on the news and stuff like that. And there he's like saying how the panic like won't stop or whatever. And I was thinking with this, when Grandma Cosby is on the phone asking questions and stuff and everything, and the Jack Black guy stops by and stuff, and he's looking for Jerome, and they find him dead, and it looks like he was kind of dead for a while and stuff, and then he just runs back inside. I was wondering if this was kind of like the killing off of Elliot's characters, if maybe Elliot killed them, maybe Elliot hired them. Because remember when he did have that conversation with Craig Robinson's character, he was like, what do you mean? And Craig Robinson was like, you really don't remember and stuff. And also how Elliot was having that mental breakdown and he didn't really know what was going on. Kind of leads me to believe, I said, what if like somehow like either him or Mr. Robot or maybe another character of himself, another facet of his imagination, so to speak, did that? You know, you never know, because he did pull a gun on him before in the first season in a way to scare him, which he did scare him and stuff, and it's referenced again later on in this episode. So you don't really know what is going on. You can just assume that either someone's out to get them, or maybe he had a run-in of his own. You just don't know sometimes with this show. And then we come to a dialysis machine, or like a life support machine, but it is a dialysis machine. And it's Craig Robinson's character, and he has flowers and stuff, and he's having breakfast with you. And at first I was like, maybe it's his wife, like it's a flashback scene or something like that, or maybe there's actually someone else sitting, but I mean, it kind of turned out that it was just him by himself. And then he's basically like, you know, whatever, just talking. And then we go to Elliot at the basketball game at Leon, and he's getting Adderall. Mr. Robot was like, morphine again, because he just overcame a morphine addiction. I remember that he was having like a high and like a breakdown from it when they were taking over the Steel Mountain or something like that, when they were taking it down. And then Leon is basically like, look, I don't want to be like a dealer and a reaper and stuff. Like, he basically is like, I'm going to give you this, but like, don't die, like, don't overdose and stuff, you know. And then he wants to get rid of Mr. Robot by taking all that Adderall and stuff like that. And then he talks about a computer with a kernel panic, which basically is like an internal fatal error, which is in a way hard to control, and basically it's hard to bring back, I guess, to reality, the computer, so to speak, kind of referencing as a human. Like, if you have that, like, it's going to be hard to always come back, I guess. That is his addiction. Like, his error is probably like addiction. He's never going to get away from it. He's always going to be addicted to something. In a way, he always has Mr. Robot in the back of his mind. He's always going to be probably trying to suppress him with morphine or Adderall, who knows, with other kinds of medicines and stuff like that. So he can never really, I guess, overcome that error. Who knows if he ever will later on in the seasons, but we'll find out, as always. And then it's kind of weird, because he's walking away and stuff, and then there's like this FBI person who's like, do you have a moment, Mr. Alderson, and stuff. And then he's taken away in a car by two guys and like a black SUV, kind of like in the first season. He was in Times Square, and he's like, it's happening. So I was just like, oh, like, I was like, shit. I was like, this is going to be bad for him. And I remember that part kind of came up in I think a preview or like the trailer for season 2. And then we go to this, I guess, homeless singer. I'm not really sure. Maybe he wasn't homeless. I think he's like, oh, I lost money in my mind. And in a way, I guess that is everyone in the universe of Mr. Robot, because everybody in a way has lost their money. You know, it's like big economic collapse, and some people are losing their minds because they lost everything. Some people can't pay bills. Some people can't do this. Some people, you know, so it's very, I guess, the singer of the generation, so to speak. And then Jack Black is on that subway and stuff, and like there's 4 cops walking by and everything like that. And then Darlene shows up, and then she told him that it was a liability to like, I think, steal drugs from his place or whatever. And then she was like, well, were you seen and stuff? And he's like, no, like only his mom saw me, whatever, whatever. And then he's like, oh, like, well, what do we do and everything like that. And it kind of just goes away from there. And then we go to Elliot being dragged onto a chair, and I do believe this one came out in a trailer or a preview. And then he's like, where am I? Like, what am I doing and stuff? And at this point, I was like, oh my god. I was like, maybe he is in trouble. Maybe they are going to get him. Like, you just never know. And then they're mixing cement and stuff like that in like a little, I want to say like a wagon or like those things that you like carry stuff with. You know what I mean? And they're making him swallow it and everything like that and stuff. They put like the funnel in his mouth, and he's like, they're force feeding him basically the cement and stuff. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, maybe Elliot's actually going to die this time. But leave it to Sam Esmail and stuff like that to kind of do like a little plot twist, so to speak, where it goes to him throwing up the Adderall when he starts gagging on like the cement being forced down his throat. And I was like, oh, I was like, did not really see that coming, you know, like it was just scary. Like I thought they'd stop and like they'd punch him in the stomach, but no. It was just throwing up his Adderall. And then Mr. Robot is like, oh, I own you, like I burrowed so deep into your brain and everything like that, like you'll never get rid of me and such. And then he tries to eat the Adderall like pills out of his vomit that he threw up and stuff, and then he's like, I will not be owned and everything like that. And I was just like, disgusting. And then we go to the old guy, Mr. Price, and Portia, and he basically tells her like, oh, like, sorry about Gideon, like your old boss and stuff, like I found out like he was shot, whatever. And she's just like, thank you for like your condolences or whatever, you know. And then she's talking about the interview, and he's saying like, oh, like I want prep of everything, I want the questions, I want like final approval of the questions and stuff, and this and that and stuff. And she's kind of just like, okay and stuff. But then she also says like it's kind of a mistake going for like the Fox News stuff or whatever in the interview. And she's like, we should do Bloomberg because like that's where the investors have the money or something like that, you know, to make E-Corp seem trustworthy, where fsociety's mission is to make people lose trust in them with the burning of the money. And then tells her to sit down, and he's like, oh, have you ever had dinner at like Fidelio's or something? And he's like, oh, like it used to be a dive bar, it used to be this. So it seems like we're finding out history of places, maybe shady pasts of a place, reasons, superstitions of why things have happened, etc., etc. And it's very interesting to see how it's going on. And then he's like, oh, so you've never had like some weird dish or something? And then she was like, no. And he's like, well, you've never had it until you had it there. Like, I know the chef and stuff and blah, blah, blah. And at this point, I was like, is she going to be like the office hoe or something? Like, are they just going to like use her for like sex or something, you know? Like, because that is kind of in a way what she's been told by her, like, the lawyer attorney lady. Sorry, I was like moving this because it kind of moved a little. And she's just like, no, and everything like that. Then he's like, oh, well, Saturday, 8 p.m., like, there will be a car to take you to, like, the restaurant, blah, blah, blah. And then he basically agrees with her afterwards. It's like, well, the Bloomberg is kind of appropriate and stuff, like, you know, like, that is, like, a good decision, whatever. And then she's like, oh, well, thank you. And then there's a paper map behind him of Europe. I want to say, like, 1642, but I could be totally wrong. And then she's looking at this, like, newspaper clipping and stuff, and he's like, you always look at that before like you leave my office and stuff. And he's like, I wonder why and stuff. And it's a person shooting someone. I don't know the scene. And then he's like, the world is like best with a bullet in the right place every time or something like that. And it zooms in on the picture, and it's like someone shooting someone, like they're grabbing it. So I guess like a revolutionary assassination of sorts and stuff like that, which is kind of similar to what they did. Like, they kind of shot Evil Corp, but maybe, like, they're shooting themselves and they don't know it with Elliot, or, like, F-Society did that, you know? So it can be, like, a million different interpretations no matter how you look at it, so to speak. But obviously, either we will find out or we'll just have to keep on guessing as time goes by with each season. And then, this is so weird. I like how I knew where the show was exactly from, just like last time. But there's a $1 Million Listing New York episode with a proposal in Times Square, and I'm just like, oh my god, these shows, like, sponsoring shows, so to speak. And then the FBI lady is getting ready and stuff, you know, she's looking in the mirror, putting on makeup, drinking coffee, and this And I always find it so weird that the mirror keeps popping out, because there was a mirroring episode, or an episode called Mirroring in the first season. And then also when Elliot is looking into the mirror, like trying to find out who he is, Mr. Robot, and then Darlene's face, and then Portia's face, and I keep wanting to say Gideon's face popped up, but I don't know. And stuff, so it's very interesting how the mirror is kind of playing a lot. I was like, Oculus? At first. And then she puts in a code into a safe, and she takes out what I thought was a USB, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's her badge, or something like that. And then it goes to a Snowden commercial. So I was like, oh, Snowden. And I want to say, I believe they did have, I want to say it was on Carly Chaikin's Instagram that she was talking to Edward Snowden, or they had an interview with Edward Snowden, something like that, or maybe it's another person. I want to say Julian Assange would be the other person, but I doubt it was him. I'm pretty sure it was Edward Snowden, so I guess Mr. Robot did that because, you know, they were, I guess, promoting just the movie that's coming out soon, etc. And then we go to a place, again, at Jerome's house, and there's like a sick cop there, and it's the FBI lady, Officer Perot. And there's like leaked papers and stuff like this, and then she's like, oh, like, there's a lot of leaked papers about FBI agent names, and I want to say numbers or addresses, something like that. And then they're like, oh, like, the desktop was unlocked, like, we're gonna go through it and stuff, and she tells him, like, oh, like, did you check to see if the ports were modified? Did you check to see if this or whatever? And he's like, no, and then, like, basically not the monitor, but I think the desktop is what it's called, like, just catches on fire or something, like, oh my god, and stuff. It's just kind of like, told you so, like, there goes your evidence, so to speak. And then she basically tells the cop that it's kind of bad to be coughing and infecting the whole squad and everything like that. And then she's like, it's very irresponsible, and then she just leaves. So, badass bitch, so to speak. And then there's a kid with an airplane when we come back, and it's Darlene at Malala Girl's house. And that is the Indian girl who she was in the limousine with when Darlene met with the Dark Army. So far as we know, the Dark Army only knows Darlene and her boyfriend, the Malala girl, and I want to say that should be it. Maybe Elliot, which is confirmed later on in this episode, but of course, like, I want to say face to face, maybe just those two they've seen. And then obviously when Elliot met with White Rose, who knows if White Rose will pop up again in this episode, who knows if White Rose will be mentioned, name drop, etc., etc. Because all these people have a very bigger part to this series. And Jack Black is there, and they're discussing the whole, like, Jerome and Gideon situation of burning money, and then she says, like, well, we want the public to lose, like, their confidence in Evil Corp and stuff. And then Jack Black asks, like, well, is the Dark Army, like, killing them? Like, it's been 2 deaths in a row, like, it's not, like, a coincidence of sorts. And then she's like, well, no, like, the person who killed Gideon was kind of like a conspiracy theorist person, in a way. Because remember, he killed Gideon because he was like, oh, you're a good crisis actor, or whatever. And then the person who killed Jerome, they just don't know who it is. And with the FBI involved, they're only involved because they know Jerome was a hacker and he was in jail for like 6 years. So, like, maybe he leaked something, but then we're like, did he get a deal gone bad? Did this happen? Who knows who shot him? I'm like, was it Elliot after he pulled out that gun on him in the first season? Maybe he knew something. We don't know. And then, again, they talk about Elliot. And Darlene was like, Elliot would never, like, give us away like that. Elliot wouldn't do this. Elliot wouldn't do that. Like, Elliot, like, she's like, I know Elliot. Like, he wouldn't do it. And he kind of criticizes her and says, like, oh, well, you don't want to hear it because Elliot's her brother. Obviously, she's going to protect Elliot and stuff like that. So, he also, when Darlene is kind of getting into it with him, not really, it was just, like, a very minor, I would say, like, they kind of butted heads for just a second there. He says, like, he kind of wants to leave and stuff, and Darlene is like, well, you should, like, rather be dead instead of moving to Arizona. And then she was like, but I'll talk to Elliot and stuff, kind of, I guess, to just instill some confidence that she's like, I'll see what it's all about. See if maybe they do have a part in it. See if Elliot had a part in it. And stuff like that. And then she's like, you just need to be cool. And Jack Black is basically telling Malala, she's like, I don't trust them. Like, I don't trust Elliot. I don't trust Darlene. Darlene seems a little shady this season. Elliot just is all over the place with his addictions, with his craziness, with his kind of I guess, multiple personality disorder or something like that and stuff. And then he's like, you know what, like, it's like, what if they know what they did, like they finally realized it, and they're trying to make a cover up, and then he tells her like, what better cover up would they have by getting rid of their tracks, and who would the tracks be? The people involved with the hack. So he's kind of, I guess, conspiring that they're killing them or something of sorts. So who knows? And this episode is really long, so if this recap seems a little long, sorry. And then we go back to Craig Robinson, and he's with a guy. They're talking about money and stuff like that. And then he's like, "Oh, like I'm just here for positive reinforcement, etc., retribution, and stuff." And then he's basically like, yeah, "I know, like you want to get your money and your health and stuff." And at first, I thought this is Darlene's boyfriend. I don't know who this guy is. I don't think we've ever seen him in a previous episode, so I'm not sure. And then he's like, "I'm just only here to put your life in balance and stuff." And then he talks about how he tries to empty bitcoins or something, but every time he tries to move them out of a place, like the system crashes and like he can't figure something out. So I guess he was hired to do a job for him, and they just don't know. Which again leads me to think maybe he's trying to use Elliot. Maybe Elliot, when he talked to him, was like, "Oh, like let's do this. I can do this for you." Like blah blah blah. And then when Elliot was like, "I don't know what you're talking about," he had to go on and try to find someone else. So there's a lot of like, like, who is Craig Robinson's character really? Like, what does Ray play in this whole scheme of games? Because it does seem that Craig Robinson's character has, like, a really big role now that we saw that it looks like he's some kind of hitman, middleman kind of a person that, I guess, lures people into a trap, so to speak, by hiring them to do something, but then they can't do it. And then he's like, "I just can't figure it out. Like, you need to find someone else." And then he walks out of the door, and that point, I'm like, I don't know if he killed him, if he just killed him, because the family, well, the mother and the daughter were in the background kind of like hugging each other, like, oh my god, like they're scared, so obviously something went down. And I'm just like, who knows if he killed them once he left or not, which leads me to suspect, like, maybe he is a dangerous person, so to speak. And then he's like, well, like, whatever, like, they just leave, him and this other guy in the car. And he goes to Elliot, not him, but like the show goes to Elliot, and Elliot's like, "Oh, I have a secret to tell you. Like, I went 3 days without sleep." And he's like, "But that isn't the secret," and stuff like that. He's like, "Oh, Mr. Robot, like like he's gone. Like, Mr. Robot is gone again." So it kind of goes back to the premiere where he's like trying to get rid of Mr. Robot, but as always, Mr. Robot is gonna come back somehow. And then he's like, "Oh, like I'm happy now," and blah blah blah, like after he's taking his meds, and he's taking his meds really happily and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, like I'm more awake, I'm more focused, like I'm kind of 100%," because he's 100% gone. Will he ever be? Who knows? And then he's like, "Oh, I could like talk to Leah now," and stuff like that, and he's like holding up the dishes, like these are immaculate and stuff, like his chores, his kind of regular programming, I guess, is back on schedule. And stuff like that. He's like, "Oh, I even found God." And this kind of reminded me of Lana Del Rey's song "Without You," because there's a line in there that I really, really, really love. And she says, "I even think I found God," I want to say, in the flashbulbs of the pretty cameras and stuff. And the whole song, it kind of reminds me, I feel like a lot of songs that I talk about kind of like make me kind of make deeper connections and stuff. I don't know. Because I don't really recognize the music that they use in the soundtrack and stuff like that, like right away. Obviously, like I have to go and look at it and then like look up lyrics if I'm that interested in it, but I just don't. I always make my own connections, so that's just a side note. And he's like, "Amen," and stuff like that, and he's at the basketball game and he's cheering, and he does basically the same, and he's like, "Slam dunk," and he's like cheering on the game, and everyone's kind of like, okay, like this isn't the normal Elliot, so to speak, since Elliot is so like reserved in his little black jacket and stuff like that. So that was kind of funny. And then he's like, "I'll finally talk to you," which means us, his friend, the audience, everything like that. Because at first he didn't want to talk to us, so I was like, "Bitch." And then he's like, "This is like, wow." He's like, "I'm not gonna like be afraid of y'all, so to speak, anymore." And he's like, "You guys aren't buying this, are you?" Like it just snaps back, and he's like, "This is the 5th day that I've gone without sleep and stuff." And he's just like, there's a distant panic that's still there, and he's like, but it's just like not there, and it's kind of the kernel panic, and he's holding like the little Adderall like pill tablet thing, and like he's like holding it to his mouth, and it just starts like distortions, like a digital distortion, which is the name of Iggy Azalea's new album. And if you've watched her music video for Team, she's walking, I think, through like an airport and stuff, and like there's like little distortions like in people and stuff like that. And it took me back to that. And there's one interview that Iggy Azalea did with a radio show, and she talks about the whole meaning of the album and how like on her side it's like being a celebrity and like the image that's painted of you, so to speak, with social media, with the media itself, and like interviews and maybe things caught on tape and blah 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 and stuff like that. And this in a way reminded me of the Mr. Robot thing, obviously with the album being called Digital Distortion and the music video and stuff like that. But I was kind of thinking, I was like, wow, this is a very like interesting kind of concept, so to speak, and kind of makes me think like Iggy Azalea kind of came in as like a very loved rapper, and then now it's kind of like she became like the black sheep of rap, so to speak. Who knows? But just kind of the connections I make in my own head, I was like, okay, this is like weird and stuff. And then there's two kids in fsociety masks. I think two in blue dresses and one in a red one and stuff. And I was like, okay, like what is this? Like a scary movie now? I'm like, is it gonna become American Horror Story? Or like the little kids are running around the hotel or something? I'm like, and then he talks about his internal fatal error, and he's like watching a washing machine, and there's like flickering in his eyes and stuff. Like even when he's at a basketball game and stuff, and it's just like, I guess he's losing again. He's having another mental breakdown. Who knows? And then he's like, oh, this is my 6th day without sleep, and he's like, I'm crashing. Like, it's like soon my consciousness will be gone and whatever and stuff like that. And he's distorted again and stuff like this, and he's like, oh, he's like, the panic doesn't settle and stuff. He's like, it's just there, but it kind of slowly creeps up back on him and everything like that. And then he's like, this is like due to like a situation and stuff or whatever. And then they go to a scene with Angela in the mirror, and she's dressed up for the dinner, and again it's the mirror. And I'm just like, there's something about mirrors this episode, or like seeing their own selves or reflection, Mulan and stuff. And then she's like, you're likable, you're attractive, she's like, you're beautiful. And those things just make me laugh, because I'm just like, oh, Angela. And then, but just like Portia Doubleday, like just her saying it, I'm just like, it's just so, it makes me laugh, because it's like in the mirror she's like, you're likable, you're beautiful, and I'm just like, okay girl, like it's that. And she's basically saying that, and she goes to a restaurant. There's F-Society protesters outside, probably because they recognize that the guys there are from Evil Corp and stuff like that. And then he's like, oh, like, you know, like blah blah blah, like she's got shown to the table, etc. And then they meet with two colleagues. She thinks she's going on a date with Mr. Price, which is she was gonna hoe herself out, I guess. And she meets Saul Weinberg, who is like the main director of like operations, and some gym guy or whatever, and he's the SVP of PA. And Price is like, I'm the master of the universe and stuff. And then the lady, the waitress, comes by and says, oh, you have to pay up front for like dinner and stuff, just due to the situation, which is the fact that there's no card. A lot of fancy people, so to speak, go to fancy restaurants and pay with a card, so it's time for them to use cash. And then that is due to the situation again, so to speak. And then he's like, oh, at the end of everything, it's like, oh, let's hope like these new relationships lead to new opportunities. And then they mention the after show on the website before the commercial break. And then we come back to the FBI lady, Dominique Perot, or whatever her name is. She's masturbating. And I was like, okay, like you talked about ghosts. There's random kids in masks running around places and there's sex. I'm like, is this going to become like the new American Horror Story? Like, I like Mr. Robot, but I was like, is this going to be like weird again? I was like, is this going to become a new American Horror Story or something? Like, it's going to be... I don't know. I like the show, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, what kind of road are we taking now? And then she asked, like, her little Amazon person, Alexa, she's like, oh, when's the end of the world and stuff? She's like, well, she's like, in billions of years, and the sun blows up or whatever and stuff. And then she's just like, she's just like, whatever. And then she looks at the list again in her safe, and she's just like, huh, on her phone. And I don't remember which name she looked on at first when she first saw the list, when Cosby was killed and everything like that, but we'll see what that means later on. And then there is a code, so to speak, in Elliot's journal. He's like, oh, Mr. Robot will be back soon and stuff. He's like, the madness is gonna, you know, I guess, take him over, so to speak. It's just gonna burrow back into his head and stuff like that. And he's like, that's when he became my god and stuff. And then he's like, I kind of like want to cry, but like I'm too high and stuff. And he's at like a church group. And then there's this white guy talking about this Indian dude that he kind of bullied and then who he like, I guess, punched to death and stuff. He's like, oh, there's a thunderstorm. And then when I went out, there was like a ray of light and I knew God forgave me and weird stuff that happens like that. And the lady there was like, oh, well, Jesus loves you. And then she's like, Elliot, is it your turn to share him? And then he's like, oh, well, why would I share my system is hung? But that's not the only thing about Rami Malek that's hung. And then he's like, God helps. And then he's like, does God really help in a way by asking, why didn't he help Gideon when some crazy person killed him and like all these other like sinners are like running around free and rampant, blah, 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 and stuff. And it's like, they're just the guilty roam free. And then he talks about like wars and religion's name and how religion separates people and it's all organized religion to manage people and stuff like that. And he compares religion to a drug where he says like the drug of hope, which are the followers follow as addicts, so to speak. They kind of depend on like those people who like divide again the people and everything like that to run them and stuff. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, when I made the post of American Horror Story with that cap, I referenced Lady Gaga, which is weird that the Lady Gaga thing, American Horror Story now, like Mr. Robot and stuff. She talked about how evil is very intelligent, how it doesn't have politics, it doesn't have a religion, it doesn't have a color or like anything, like it's just there, but it's very intelligent and smart in the sense that it says, while we're fighting, how can it divide, I guess, humanity or people, so to speak, into smaller factions and then make those factions hate within themselves and hate each other. So it's like it's always winning, it's always fighting and stuff like that. And I don't know, if you read my Instagram post and then if you see Lady Gaga's, I guess, press conference or whatever with the Dalai Lama, you'll kind of understand where I'm coming from. If I remember, I feel like I always say this. I'll try to link it down below if I do remember. But and then mentions like an imaginary friend, Mr. Robot. He's like, why would I listen to that imaginary friend, God, etc. Then he's like, does the worship like equal happiness and everything like that? And then he's like, God like basically owns you and stuff. And then he's like, it's a distorted reality and stuff. And then he's like, God isn't his scapegoat for him and stuff like that. And then he's like, did I just say that out loud and stuff? He's like, oh, he's like, well, F God. Basically, and then he throws his journal and he leaves the church group. So, I don't know. It's kind of reminded me also like a Madonna, like a prayer kind of a moment where he like, in a way denounces God and stuff, but he's kind of also kind of like questioning things. Because if you do remember the Like a Prayer music video, Madonna kind of didn't, I guess, report the truth, and this black guy was framed for a murder of, I want to say, a lady, when it was two white robbers and stuff like that. So it reminded me of that. And also, like, the blasphemy of the song and the video of the burning crosses, like, just with what Elliot said, I was like, either Sam Esmail doesn't like God or whatever. Not that it's a bad thing, but I was, like, trying to think of things. I was like, you never know. But then they live in computers, like fsociety, so it's like, they're detached from the world, so to speak. So that would be their, like, thought process and everything like that. Like, they're just in computers and, like, people and this and that and everything like that. And, like, evil corp is evil. Like, they're bad people and stuff, so it's just that kind of thing. And then they're back at the dinner, and it's Angela and stuff, and then the Mr. Price, the old guy, is like, oh, like, Angela and I are gonna have a drink. And he's basically signaling to the other two, like, leave. Like, this is our time now. And at first I was like, oh, like, maybe he's gonna, like, try to hook up with her or something. Who knows, because Angela is becoming that kind of a hoe now. There's just nothing wrong with being a hoe. Amber Rose would tell you. We're like the United Sluts of America. And then, those two guys, before they leave, like, oh, like, see us anytime, Angela, for lunch. Like, it's on you, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I guess flirting with her, which is why I thought, I'm like, maybe they're all gonna take turns with her. I don't know. And he's like, oh, how'd you like that dish, this semi-Frito, or whatever it was called, and stuff. And she's like, oh, like, I liked it, you know, like, whatever, like, small talk. And then he's like, oh, well, one of those guys is, like, the reason why we have Toys for Tots, and the other one is, like, the non-profit kind of a person and stuff. And he's like, they were both in the room, and Colby made the error of the leak in your hometown. Don't remember the leak. That is also some of the evidence, so to speak, information that Angela took to the attorney lawyer lady that she met with in the premiere, And she was like, I want to help in this. And she's like, I don't need you here. And then she cut off all ties with her now that she's working with Evil Corp and everything. So it's kind of like, I guess, coming full circle. Like, maybe she will think, like, man, did I do the wrong thing? Am I doing the right thing now that he's, like, trying to, like, say all this and stuff like this? And then he's like, they're just ordinary men capable of extraordinary things, which kind of reminds me of, like, gods. In the sense of, like, I want to say, like, let's say Perseus, when he was offered to be a god, but he was, like, an ordinary man, but he did, like, amazing things and stuff. Or maybe someone like Joan of Arc, I don't know. Just things like that, like, religious-wise. And then he's, like, they were doing, like, insider trading and stuff, which reminded me of that movie, The Boss. Such a funny movie. And then he gives her a CD, and he's like, there's enough evidence in there, Angela, basically, to put them away for years. Like, they'll get what they deserve. Like, you'll get retribution, so to speak. You'll get what you wanted. Everything like that. And he was like, he's gonna leave, and he's like, oh. I was like, well, your car is out front and stuff. And then she tells him, whatever you're doing, she's like, I don't trust it. And that kind of seemed to kind of just cross him a little. And he walks back up to her, and I thought he was gonna hit her, like stab her or something. I don't know. And then he's like, you're panicking right now. He's like, that's fine. He's like, it's whatever. And then he's like, but, he's like, just remember, he's like, those men's lives will be destroyed if you just remove all your emotion and you just do what you have to do. He's like, give the evidence. You get what you want. Those men are punished. They got what they deserved. They got what was coming for them with their, like, white-collar crimes and stuff that they get away with and everything like that. And he's just like, basically, do the right thing. In a way, communicating to her. And he leaves and stuff. And this reminded me of Lana Del Rey's Gods and Monsters. If you hear the lyrics, you kind of play along with this scene and how the whole God concept comes in and, like, the monsters concept comes in. Like, well, they're the bad people who are, like, the gods here. Like, they have all the money, like, the 1% of the 1%. So it's very playing or banking on that, like, religious aspect of, like, the top and who controls you and who do you worship, the dollar in this situation. So it's very much like, And then this also makes me wonder, will she be the second Elliot? Because Elliot was kind of, in a way, offered this when he was doing the honeypot and stuff like that, or whatever, when Allsafe was hacked, and then when he gave the FBI the Colby information, when they're like, who did it? And he was like, break the codes and you'll find out. When Angela was also kind of, like, pushed out of the room because, like, she wasn't smart enough or whatever with her response to Colby. So that just makes me wonder if Angela also will play a big part. Maybe Angela and Craig Robinson's character will be the biggest people in this situation, aside from, like, Elliot and Tyrell possibly meeting up again. Elliot maybe having another mental breakdown, going in some other revolution. But I'm like, okay, like, everyone seems to be playing, like, a big role again. And then we go to Elliot at a diner. Greg Robinson shows up with his journal and stuff. And I found it weird because I don't know if he got a call from the place and he went and he found the journal, or he knew about the journal and they told him he threw it away. Who knows what was going on? Maybe he follows him, maybe he stalks him, even if they had a call or not, who knows. And then he's like, okay, he's like, you might want this back. And Elliot's like, why? And he's like, well, I've been down that road and stuff, like, you know, like, I've been there and stuff. And he's like, oh, 5 years, like, whatever, months and weeks and 2 days ago or whatever. He's like, my wife died and stuff. And then he's like, but then he's like, I did breakfast by myself and stuff. And he's like, I turned my dialysis machine on, like I always do. And then he's like, I talked out loud. He's like, and then I did that again and again and again. In a way, kind of like how Elliot would write in his journal, found his own sanity for I guess, short amount of time, so to speak, before Mr. Robot came back up. Because remember, the time in this series is just a couple of months after the 5/9 attack. So, you know, 5/9 hack. We're just like, what is really going on here? And then he's like, okay, basically, like, why are you telling me this and stuff? And he's like, you and I are very much alike. So I wonder if Craig Robinson's character is Elliot without the morphine, staying Mr. Robot, but a little bit more in control. Because maybe he came to terms with the death or something like that. So it's very odd. It's very interesting. I'm like, I wonder what kind of a part these two people play. But of course, we really won't know until later. And then we go to Dominique Pirot, the FBI lady. She's knocking on the grandma's door. of Bill Cosby, and she's like, I already talked to the police and stuff. And then she was like, oh, I know your son rolled joints because you have arthritis, so you can do it, and you smoke and everything like that. And then she's like, I can do it for you. She was like, I would roll in from my brother and stuff like that. And she lets her in and stuff after a while, and then she's smoking and stuff. And she's like, oh, like, I noticed you're moving out because a lot of things are packed up. And then she's like, well, she's like, there's too much memory here for me. Like, I'm just not going to live here anymore, you know? Like, I guess her grieving is just moving on to another place. She's old anyways. And then she asks him, like, basic questions, like, oh, like, well, what'd he do and where would he go, blah, 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 and everything. And then she's like, oh, well, he had no friends and stuff. And then she coughs, and she's like, oh, you bring me a glass of water and stuff. And I was like, okay, like, either, like, she's gonna drug her or something, you know, something like that. And she's like, the glasses are, like, over there. She's like, they're, like, packed up in a box. And when she does do that, at first I thought she, like, just found something in there. But turns out the paper that, like, if you ever bought, like, glassware at a store, let's say, like, I don't know, you go to Walmart, so to speak, and, like, they'll wrap, like, a glass or a mug in, like, magazines and stuff. So if it breaks or something, or, like, they don't hit against each other and chip and crack. But again, like, if it breaks, like, it kind of just stays wrapped up in the paper, I suppose. And in that paper typed was coding. And she's just like, this is interesting. And also, going back to the ports, maybe the Bill Cosby guy, like, printed out a lot of things. Maybe he didn't print out a lot of things. Who knows how much evidence could possibly be in there. And then she's going through everything and stuff like this. And she's like, huh, like, maybe she's going to find more paper wrapped in coding. Maybe she'll find a list or something. And then she finds the End of the World party, and there's a little Evil Corp logo. And that is, like, the ad for the End of the World party in the first season that they were, like, putting up places. Where was the End of the World party? In the fsociety arcade. So this, in a way, the party, the event, the whole hack may come back to bite them in the butt. Who knows, really, how it's going to work out. But I'm just thinking they left a paper trail, you know, like, without realizing it. They thought they were finished, they were done. They didn't think about the FBI getting involved really as much or as easily as it is happening, this series of unfortunate events, so to speak. And then we go to Elliot and Greg Robinson's character, and he's like, well, what do I do? And stuff. He's like, what, the journal and everything? Like, he's asking questions. And then he's like, well, there's a right to, like, you know, I guess your sanity, so to speak, in simplistic terms. I don't know if that's a word. And everything is like, you want, like, control and stuff. Like, you want to control your life and everything like that. And then he talks about his wife being the perfect driver, but one day that all, like, didn't matter. I'm assuming she died in a car accident. I don't know. And then it's like, that control is false and everything like that. He's like, it's like a unicorn, like, peeing at the end of a rainbow or something. I was just like, okay. And then it was such an odd scene. And he's like, well, if you fall up, he's like, the only thing you have to do is get up. And he was like, I kind of denounced that religion, so to speak. Because he's like, I reject that thought and stuff. He's like, because, like, what you really do when you fall is, like, you're just, instead of grasping at nothing in the dark, he's like, you basically have to stumble in the right direction. Because it's like, you're already hurt, you're already, like, limping and stuff. So just keep on swimming, keep on swimming. Like Dory says and stuff like that. So I was just like, okay, that's interesting. And it's like, stumble in the right direction again. And then it's like, whoever was in that journal and stuff, he's like, do you still see him and stuff like that? Because remember, Elliot sees Mr. Robot, but he doesn't, you know, like, it's kind of in his head, but it isn't, but it is, and stuff, because he kind of acts him out in a way. And then he's like, well, he's like, maybe that person meant something, like, maybe the journal means something, maybe the whole idea means something more to Elliot, maybe possibly more than we think, more than he knows, more than, like, the superficiality of, like, taking down Evil Corp. Who exactly knows? And then he's like, you don't, like, want something like that in a way to take over. And then he's like, you don't want to talk and stuff like that. And when he kind of, like, says that, Elliot is like, I don't want to talk. And in a way, Greg Robinson's character is kind of like, you probably do want to talk, you know, thinking at this point, I was like, it's going to become, like, Elliot's new therapist, but, like, abuse him in the sense of making him do his dirty work, like, with technology and stuff from earlier in the season. I mean, in the series, well, episode of this series, and where we saw Elliot back with his therapist, which I was surprised that he was with her, but that she wanted to see him, but who knows. Basically asked him, do you want to play chess and stuff? And he gets up, and Mr. Robot is there. Which is why I say Mr. Robot's never going to go away. And it's basically like, is Ray right? Like, he starts questioning and stuff, and he's like, well, he's like, I'm not, in a way, gonna wait or avoid the next crash or anything like that. So, like, I guess this next breakdown, his next mental, like, ugh, flip or whatever, and stuff like that. He's like, but he's like, just, I guess, live on life and stuff. And he's basically saying, like, you just gotta wait for the next breakdown in a way. Is like to find that flaw and then to fix it and to keep on going. And as he's like narrating this like whole narration at the end, we see Dominique Pirot, the FBI lady, and she's like, with the little phone GPS or whatever, the little end of the world party, and she's like walking around New York, so to speak, and she's looking for the fsociety arcade. In a way, just following the directions, following the address, and she's kind of just walking around. She stumbles across the fsociety arcade, and then she's like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!" And I was like, "Oh." So it's obviously gonna bite them in the butt. They're in their headquarters. If this place is evil, like if it's ghosts or something, if Sam Esmail goes down that way, which I feel like he wouldn't or he shouldn't, but I was like, you never know. It's some kind of American Horror Story kind of a deal and stuff. And then it just goes to stay tuned, and I was like, oop. Like I was like, is there gonna be another intermission or something? And then now it just shows like in a way where the I guess previews for next week's episode, and it's talking about like making peace and stuff, and like the winner takes all, and it's kind of like the inner conflict between Elliot and Mr. Robot. Like Elliot wants control, Mr. Robot wants control, but it's kind of like fighting with himself, so to speak. Like who's gonna have control of Elliot's mind? He's like, is it me? Is it Mr. Elliot? I mean Mr. Elliot, Mr. Robot. Or is it both? Since Mr. Robot does say, well, I wonder if I do this, was it you? Or because Mr. Robot did this, it was Elliot. If Elliot does something, Mr. Robot does something, means they are like the same person. So who knows? And then we see Darlene. I want to say we did see Tyrell and Joanna in an SUV together. And you just see everyone's face again, and it's just like, on next week's episode, So that's where the episode ended off. Again, this is Colonel Panic. This was a longer episode than usual. I think it was like an hour and a half and stuff, which I love and I don't at times because I just stay up late filming this, and then I'm just like, oh, I want it up so bad and stuff like that. And I just want to get to filming when like there's more and stuff, and I'm just like, oh. But again, please leave in the comments any other theories you have. Like this video, please subscribe, please comment again down below. If you want me to like direct message them on Twitter and stuff, be like, hey, we should have like a Funko Pop of Mr. Robots and stuff like that, Mr. Robot, Elliot, maybe an F-Society person in a mask, or I don't know, stuff like that. They'll figure it out. Maybe they'll do Joanna, who knows, or Tyrell, but I don't know. And again, thinking about American Horror Story at the beginning and stuff, I was like, I wonder if anyone from like American Horror Story besides Matt Quayle, who does the music for like American Horror Story and Scream Queens and other shows, is involved. So I'm like, I wonder. But anywho, that was episode 2.1, Colonel Panic, and I hope you liked it. Again, please like, rate, share, and subscribe, and comment down below anything, and I'll try to link what I said if I remember while I'm editing, if it's like 3 or 4 in the morning. But anywho, I want to say hi to Rami Malek, stay safe, God bless, and don't forget to buy Mr. Robot on DVD or stream it on Amazon, catch up, everything like that. Go to who'smrrobot.com every Wednesday afterwards to keep up with the after show, etc., etc. I'll try to link playlists, everything like that of Mr. Robot and stuff like that. So again, thank you guys for watching, and I want to say hi to Rami Malek, stay safe, and God bless you guys.